Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to a game of throws in World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. Today we've got a Tier 8 domination battle on the hotspot map, starring Dear Mr. Frodo 1 in the French Tier 8 destroyer Le Terrible, or however the hell we pronounce it. I'm just going to call it the Terrible, because, well, I'm lazy and I cannot into French. So, yeah, what do you need to know about this ship? Well, it's fairly typical of French destroyers in that it is extremely fast. I mean, this thing it'll do 45 knots without a speed flag or an engine boost. And it has an engine boost, and with the engine boost, it will exceed 50 knots. It is seriously fast. But it also has absolutely terrible stealth, and it doesn't have a smoke screen. This is not the destroyer of choice for when it comes to flipping cap circles, especially in a game where the enemy team have radar, although they don't in this battle, but they do have an aircraft carrier. 6.7 kilometers is the best, and when I say best, I mean should probably really be saying worst, because it's awful, that you can get the concealment on this thing down to. That's with the concealment mod and a 10-point captain with the concealment expert skill. This is going to be very important, because you see the gap between the edge of the island over there and the map border to the west? That's about 5 kilometers, which means it's basically impossible for this destroyer. I think, in fact, it's impossible for any destroyer to sneak up this flank and spot without being spotted in return. Maybe one of the submarines could get away with it, but it would still be very, very dangerous. The Terrible, however, absolutely, definitely, 100% cannot get away with stuff like that. Not without getting spotted, and given that there's a mines up there, and that thing is death on legs to destroyers. A couple of salvos from that thing's guns will wreck any destroyer. So Frodo came up here, he had a look, he thought, yeah, I don't like the look of that. I'll launch some torpedoes, you never know, I might get lucky. And he's doing his best to continue spotting, but trying to push up this flank would be suicide. This thing doesn't sneak anywhere. The reason I'm making such a point out of this is that there is at least one member of his team who just doesn't seem to get it. Don't worry, you'll know it when it happens. The torpedoes on this thing are, they're all right. They're certainly nothing great, but they're not, well, terrible. See what I did there? Oh, that was a terrible... Oh, I did it again. Okay, it's not funny. I'll stop. I'm sorry. We were talking about the... they pack a decent punch, over 18,000 average damage. Obviously, you then have to take into account the target's torpedo damage reduction. Oh, the team have just lost their first casualty, the Akazuki. Don't worry, plenty more where that one came from. They do pack a nice punch, but the problem is the range. Oh, that was unfortunate. Okay, fortunately the Atlantico had already selected a target, and he's going to have to force that enemy submarine to dive. And even then he's going to stay detected because he had to use the guns. Yeah, this is unfortunate. But it's not that bad, because it's only really the Atlantico who's managed to run himself aground who would have been in a position to do anything about this. And it's going to be an extremely lucky Atlantico that manages to hit a Terrible going at full speed. And he is going at full speed. He's got the engine boost up. Look at how fast this thing is going. He was actually going faster than 50 knots there for a while, but of course the second you start to turn, you do bleed speed off. The lack of the smoke screen and the awful stealth does seem like a bit of a handicap in these French destroyers, but all it means is that it does have a slightly higher skill floor. The ship is very responsive to throttle commands, and you're going to see Frodo here exploiting that to his benefit. You'll constantly hear the telegraph ringing up changes to throttle commands, and the reason for that, this thing is so fast that if you are fully zoomed in while aiming at it, as most people are... Oh, it's managed to get a fire on the Atlantico, that's good. And here comes the New Orleans. Okay, here we go. This is exactly what I'm talking about. The New Orleans American heavy cruiser 8-inch high explosive shells will cause serious damage to any destroyer that it hits, but look at how few hits the New Orleans is actually going to land because of the rapid adjustments to the throttle that Frodo's making. The reason for this is because of the speed of this destroyer. If you have a terrible targeted while it's steaming along at full tilt, and you're fully zoomed in, as most people are when they're shooting at a target, which I'm fairly sure the New Orleans over there probably is, the amount of lead that you actually have to give in order to hit one of these things moving at full speed extends off the edge of the screen. You need to actually zoom out in order to give yourself enough screen real estate to aim far enough ahead of one of these things to hit it when it's moving at full speed. And then just when you think, okay, that's the correct amount of lead, if they're any good, that's when they start adjusting their throttle. And so you miss. And so you readjust the amount of lead that you need to give. And then it throttles up again. And so you miss. And so on, and so on, and so on. Now that does mean that these things are kind of difficult to play well. But that's the trick, isn't it? Oh, do you remember earlier I was making a big point about the roughly 5 kilometre gap between the westernmost island and the western map border up on the one line, and the 6.7 kilometre surface detection range of the Terrible. And one of the teammates on Frodo's team who didn't seem to understand why that was important, well, there he is, furiously pinging the map. And he's about to start yelling at Frodo. It's the Coronel Bolognese over there. Very upset that the destroyer with 6.7 kilometre stealth isn't trying to scout a gap that's only 5 kilometres wide and covered by an enemy cruiser. Doesn't matter how hard or how often he keeps pinging that map, the terrible stealth is going to stay 6.7 kilometres. I think this is going to be a torpedo hit, possibly a kill. And, yeah. And they needed it because they were down to 135 points, and that's only his team's second kill this battle, by the way. Which is why this is an episode of Game of Thrones. But don't worry, it's going to get worse before it starts getting any better. Yeah, they've just lost the Coronel Bolognese, who is very, very upset with Frodo. I mean, I've seen worse reactions in chat from people for far, far better reasons, but he's still not particularly happy. Frodo switching to the armour piercing here to shoot at the broadside cruiser. Relatively large caliber guns by destroyer standards. These French destroyers are equipped with 139mm guns. I mean, they're not the 150mm guns that you get on certain German destroyers, which are honestly more like light cruisers, not just in the calibre of their guns. But they still pack a bigger punch. You can score citadels on broadside cruisers with these things. I mean, you're not going to do 20,000 damage, but they're not bad. Anyway, the Nagato finishes off the New Orleans. So they have at least successfully managed to prevent the enemy team from taking a third cap circle. Oh, I don't know if you noticed. At the point where the Nagato finished off the New Orleans, Frodo's team were down to 125 points. The enemy team, of course, still surging ahead. They're soon going to be 500 points up with a 2-kill lead, and they're the only team in this battle thus far who have ever controlled a cap circle. Although we have an extremely ambitious Admiral Hipper, the German Tier 8 heavy cruiser, who is attempting to flip the cap circle at Charlie. But he's kind of attracted the attention of the enemy aircraft carrier, the Cargo. Frodo's having a... well, he's thinking about having a go over here at the central cap at Bravo, but... no, Gneisenau over there is just too close. He'll get spotted, and then he'll get forced out of the cap circle, and it'll have the same result. He'll have just lost a bunch of health in the meantime. The Hipper's gone down. The team are now at 110 points. This is the lowest they have ever been. The enemy team are almost 600 points ahead. They've retained control of Charlie, and the Gneisenau is now flipping the central cap at Bravo. Frodo flipping between first person and map view there to try to get a better indication of exactly where the waterline of the Atlantico is. And there's 2 torpedo hits on the Gneisenau. It's enough to reset his capture progress, but not enough to sink him. Atlantico having a pop, but, well, good luck. Oh, he actually did score a hit, but it was armor piercing, so 100% over pens. Finished off by the Lexington. The team are now up to a whole 150 points. Gneisenau's still capping. The Gneisenau secondaries are not bad, actually. I mean, it's no Massachusetts, and yes, the enemy team have a Massachusetts. But the secondaries on that thing can be kind of surprising. And the main gun batteries on the Gneisenau are so legendarily bad that, well, why not specialise into secondaries on that thing? Let's just say a destroyer captain who isn't prepared for a very nasty surprise should probably be wise to not get closer than 9.5 kilometres to a Gneisenau. Because unlike the main gun batteries, which are aimed mandrolically, the secondaries are automatic, and you can't fool the secondaries into misjudging the amount of lead that they need to give to a fast-moving French destroyer. Oh, the Nagato's just scored a kill, and the Massachusetts has taken a pop, but you can hear the telegraph commands to the engine room. It's going to be an extremely lucky Massachusetts that manages to catch this ship at this kind of range. I'm pretty sure that they're about to get the Gneisenau. Yep, there it goes. Nice. Kill number 2 for Frodo. Still, he's not going to be able to take that central cap at Bravo with the Massachusetts approaching. Because that thing has something like 11 kilometer secondary range. However, the cap at Charlie is looking wide open. A couple of shots at the Massachusetts, maybe start a fire, you never know your luck. Gets a couple more shots before the island occludes. Okay. Oh, that New Mexico isn't looking very clever. 2,000 health remaining. He's hot on the tail. Well, I say hot on the tail of the enemy carrier. It's in New Mexico. It's not hot on the tail of anything. But that's not going to be good news for him. The cargo's going to have him. Now, you are within range of the Massachusetts secondaries, but you really, really need to take this cap circle. I mean, it's going to be fairly obvious that you're here, because who else is going to be flipping the cap circle? But what choice? Oh, yeah. The New Mexico's just caught the attention of the cargo. The torpedo bombers going in. I think we're about to lose the New Mexico, which means that Frodo's team are about to dip below 200 points again. Now, it's here where Frodo makes what could arguably be called his only real misplay of the match. Well, first he's using armor piercing in order to... But it's a cap reset. Yeah, he switched to the high explosive now, trying to get a fire. But, yep, here come the Massachusetts secondaries. He is within range. And honestly, right now, taking this cap circle is more important than inflicting any damage on the Massachusetts. However, he doesn't actually get reset. The cargo, who didn't manage to sink the New Mexico, is coming for him. But he's too close to the island for the cargo to be able to drop torpedoes from that side, which means they would have to circle around. And instead, it's gone for the Champagne. It might have been worth actually taking the risk for the cargo and circling around, because the Terrible's AA is, well, terrible. It's really, really bad. Shockingly so. But he's managed to flip the cap. So now he's completely free to do the old zoomies, working that throttle, and continuing to rain down. I mean, he's undetected at this point thanks to the island cover, so he doesn't even have to worry about getting hit by the Massachusetts secondaries. If he can get another fire, doesn't need to. The Lexington finished him off with a fire. There's the enemy cargo. Now, it would be an extremely brave destroyer captain in this game, especially with AA as shockingly bad as the Terribles, who goes after an aircraft carrier. The New Mexico's gone down. I mean, that was fairly inevitable, although surprisingly, not at the hands of the enemy carrier. Down to the south, the entire remainder of his team, who are, by the way, still more than 500 points behind, are about to get themselves comprehensively schooled, and 3 of them are battleships, by the way, by a lone enemy cruiser. The mines. Okay, there's a Kagero over there as well, but the Kagero has been spotted. Oh, get the yes, nice. Okay, they took out the submarine. They're now actually ahead by 1 kill. I mean, they're still 500 points behind, and they're even on caps, but, well, with the mines down there, that means Frodo can actually flip the cap over here at Alpha. And he's certainly fast enough to do it. Oh, things are not looking very good for the Scharnhorst. He's on fire. Yeah, we're about to lose the Scharnhorst. Well, that's a bit of a bummer. Yeah, the Scharnhorst has gone down. The enemy team are now nearly 600 points ahead. Frodo should be able to take this cap, though. All he really has to worry about is the enemy Fuso. Well, that and the enemy carrier, because of course the second he starts taking this cap circle, the enemy carrier is going to know exactly where he is. Did I mention how bad this ship's AA defences are? I think I did. It's worth repeating. Although, having said that, he's managed to take the cap at Bravo without being interrupted by the enemy carrier. Actually, speaking of how bad this thing's AA defences are, do you remember when Operation Dynamo was first introduced? The evacuation from Dunkirk. This thing, because it was being promoted at the time, was the only Tier 8 destroyer, because it was an operation specifically for destroyers, and this was the only Tier 8 destroyer that you could take. In fact, you can see from Frodo's camo, he's even running the Operation Dynamo camouflage. The thing is, during that particular co-op operation, your destroyers were going to more or less constantly be under air attack. I don't think I ever saw one of these things shoot an aircraft down. It's almost like Wargaming were trolling us, because they knew everybody was going to want to play, not just the new French destroyer, but also the highest tier destroyer you could take into the operation. And it was almost completely useless. It's like I am very fond of saying, if you can't take a joke, you shouldn't be playing a Wargaming product. Have you noticed how the Mines is still alive? Facing off against 3 battleships, although to be fair, the Champagne is heading north after the Cargo. Well, there's the Mines. I guess if you need a job doing properly, you just need to do it yourself, huh? He's taken the cap. The team now have all 3 of the cap circles, but they're still 500 points behind. And they're down a kill. Oh, the torpedoes are looking good though. Except, they do only have an 8-kilometre range. Yep, those things must have scraped the paint of the Fuso. But it was just far enough away that it wasn't a kill. The Mines are still clinging on. The team really need points now. There's only 2.5 minutes left. High explosive loaded. Come on, baby. Oh, Mines is returning fire. That thing is very, very dangerous to destroyers, but yeah, that hurt. But what choice does Frodo have? He's got him. Okay. They're now only 400 points behind. The Fuso, the Kaga, and the Kagero. Oh, big old hit there on the Fuso. I believe that was the friendly Champagne. That's champagne to those of you who don't know how to pronounce French, which usually includes me. Come on, there's a fire. He's dead. Wait, no, there's the damage control. Oh, he's dead anyway. This is definitely a kill. It's just a question of who's going to get it. Come on, baby. Daddy needs a new pair of shoes. Have it. The Champagne takes him out. Nice shot. That just leaves the Kaga with the Champagne hot in his tail and the Kagero. And the Lexington appears to understand his assignment. He's not keeping him spotted, but he is sending the dive bombers in. And he's close enough to the Kagero that he should be able to circulate a fresh squadron. Oh, in fact, here it comes. And he's dropped fighters, so yeah. I mean, I realise this is an episode of A Game of Thrones, because, well, one team was ahead, 600 points, all of the caps and multiple kills. But they're going to lose. At the same time, though, I wasn't really sure whether or not this qualifies as a proper Game of Thrones. There's the Kagero again. Because generally, to really be a Game of Thrones, one team just has to do something stupid in order to throw away a guaranteed win. And that hasn't really been the case here. Nobody on the enemy team has really done anything incredibly stupid. The enemy Mines played a fantastic game. He actually managed to nearly win against 3 battleships by himself. The enemy Fuso was attempting to run away to the north and just take the points lead, but, well, then Frodo started flipping a cap, and he was the only person in a position to at least attempt to try to do anything about it. With less than 30 seconds to go, the enemy carrier, the Kaga, is desperately trying to stay out of line of fire of the Champagne, but the Champagne is just fast enough to get up there and kill him. And with a Lexington in play, it's basically impossible for the Kagero to remain undetected. So not exactly a game of throws. Improbable though it sounds, despite the commanding lead that they had, the enemy team just got outplayed by the 3 surviving ships on Frodo's team, himself included. So 600 points, multiple kills, and all of the cap circles behind, but they won anyway, despite the enemy team's very best efforts to not throw it. Hope you enjoyed it, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.